Hello everyone, welcome to the first session of this training. In this particular session, we will be discussing about regulation and standards. First, let us see what is GRC, governance, risk and compliance. Governance means this is a corporate governance which describes the corporate behavior and reflects the rules and procedures within the governance. Then we have risk management. Here we are reducing the risk to an acceptable level, which means the threats for the business processes or the likelihood of it can happen and impact of the business process. Then we have compliance. Under compliance, we will have the corporate policies, that is in the high level policies, and the low level policies, that how we can achieve the high level policies, and the business strategy and the legal requirement. Now let's see what are all the security standards which are presently available in the industry. As you can see, the first one is SOX, which is very important one, which is called Sarbanes-Oxley's Act. In short, we will call this SOX. This is a Corporate Auditing Accountability and Responsibility Act, which is initially constituted by United States federal law, and this is one of the very famous act which is also used in our SAP security and GRC perspective. And the next one you can see SIG-SOX. This is Canadian SOX. What Canadian government did, they passed a bill which is essentially accomplished the same thing as SOX, but it was slightly changed based on the country requirement for Canadian requirement. So we can call this as a CSOX, Canadian SOX. If you go through the section 404, it is almost same. Section 404, which explains the IT requirement. There is no much change, but small little changes, but the requirement is mainly in 404. Next one you can see is EuroSOX. This is for European Union. European Union created this regulation to prevent corporate scandal based on SOX. And the next one is JSOX. This is also quite famous in Asia Pacific. This is for country Japan. JSOX is basically an unofficial term which is used for Japanese financial, instrumental and exchange law. Business Accounting Council of Japanese Financial Service Agency introduced this law, but this JSOX is basically based on SOX. Next is very famous one, BDSG, that is Federal Law Data Protection Act of Germany. It is quite famous in Europe. This protects personal information of particular person when you are handling personal information, how you need to handle it. This particular act is quite famous to protect the personal information and privacy requirement for individuals. The next one is PCI DSS. This is for the data security standards. Actually, this is also quite famous one and it is quite old. This basically describes the data security standards which is required for your IT infrastructure and such kind of things, as well as the payment application and data security. How does it supposed to work and what kind of data security standard needs to be maintained. Then we have GAISP. This is also quite old security standard. This is General Acceptable Information Security Principle. We could say, okay, maybe this could be an initial security as a standard as General Accepted Information security principle, and later this is replaced by GASSP. So this GASSP is also generally accepted system security principle. There are slight changes were made in the GASSP. So the GAISP is replaced by GASSP nowadays. GASSP is mainly used in the IT environment. Next, let us see fragmentation. Now, if you see, we have seen different standards and different methods, how people rewrote the same standards in different requirements. Let's assume you are a multinational company and you have one SAP system in your company which span over different countries like US or in France, China, or in India, or maybe in Japan. You need to comply with each and every country regulation and requirement. Then how do we align all these things together? That will be a biggest challenge. Let's say, for example, if you want to be in US stock exchange, then you need to comply with SOX requirement. Then if you go to Germany, then you need to comply with their requirement. If you go to Japan, then you need to comply with JSOX requirement or other requirements. Basically, you need to comply with different requirements. While implementing security requirements or the regulatory requirements, each organization or every country will define their own regulatory requirement which is not known to other countries, or maybe which is non known to different department. Assume you need to do the risk management or risk assessment for each country separately, then this will become a quite complex way you will do the risk management. Basically, we are fragmenting the regulatory requirement. The SAP GRC comes into picture and it will play main role here, how we can harmonize all these requirements. If you see, SAP GRC has an integrated governance, risk and compliance model. Using our SAP GRC, you can combine and integrate all the business requirements together and make one compliance package, so that one GRC system which contains all the compliance and regulatory requirements, which is visible and shared between the countries, so that you do not need to do quite a lot of duplication of work. We will come to that, how does the approach look like and what is the advantage and disadvantages, and how we can do that in our coming sessions. Basically, the idea here is that using SAP GRC, all the requirements what we have seen, we can centralize this and we can integrate all the requirement in one system and we can centralize the entire operation. Now let us have a quick overview of managing the risk. First of all, you need to understand the controls are the one which can detect and monitor based on the behavior if it happens. The control gives a visibility that the processes you have defined within the company are running well or not, or whether we need to create or improve the controls. The controls are mainly like it should prevent before it occurs. That means main objective of the controls what we have, which will smoothen your business, and it should highlight using alerts. Let's say you have a preventative control where we are monitoring this every day, but if something goes wrong, control should be able to alert you or highlight that there is something went wrong, so that you have an alternative mechanism. So the preventative controls basically will help you to prevent before it occurs. Then we have detective control. In detective control, we will detect the occurrence after it has occurred. In detective controls, mainly in the organizations, you will detect after it occurred. But you can detect the issue and you can also make this as a preventive control. Then we have mitigation control. Mitigation control means that you know there is a risk in the particular preventative control, or let's say it could be also a detective control, but you need to accept that risk. Basically, you cannot avoid that specific condition. For that, we have mitigation controls. Now you may think, why we need to have mitigation controls where we can have preventative and detective controls. This can happen in some business scenario. You will have some business risk which you need to take. Means that in the particular business process, you have identified the risk, but you cannot prevent this risk. Here, how do we mitigate this risk using mitigation controls? You can mitigate the risk using a particular mitigation control mechanism. Let's take some example. Let's say if you see in access control, all your controls are preventative controls, meaning you prevent it before it happens. Let's say you have segregation of duties. Based on the preventative controls, you don't allow SOD violation for any users. However, in a particular business scenario, a user in a remote location is trying to do two different job roles, or let's say two different activity in your SAP system, which is creating a SOD conflict. In that case, we cannot appoint a second person. Okay, so you know there is a risk, there is an SOD violation which cannot be removed or which cannot be prevented. However, we can have a mitigation control to monitor or to mitigate this particular SOD risk. That is mitigation control. With this, we are coming to end of this particular session. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you in the next session. Bye-bye.